Alrighty, let's get into this. So this is a new series that I'm gonna do. I should have started it earlier. Obviously, we're a couple gods into the A to Z every role series now. So I wanted to kind of come out with a quick little summary or roundup of each god that I've played in the A to Z every role after I've played them in every single role, just to kind of give you guys an idea of what my thoughts are and where they belong and where they do not belong. I got this idea because I was playing Amaterasu in the mid lane, and we'll get to that a little bit more in depth when we ground up to her episode here on this. But it was not fun, we'll just say that the least, and I want to make sure I have a summary video so that you guys fully understand each role and what I feel. And these are all opinions, right? So someone could be godly with Amaterasu and be able to kill it in the mid lane. But you know, it's just one of those things where this is my opinion and this is where I feel, and I want to make sure you guys know what my opinion is, so that no one just goes and locks someone into a certain role where I feel they don't belong, just based off of just coming into my video, scrolling 20 minutes in, seeing that they'll be trying it. I want to make sure you understand why I feel like they belong somewhere or do not belong somewhere, and what they do to the team comp if you put them in that position. Now, obviously, people hate you when you lock a god into a role that they don't belong in, but some gods fit very well all around the field. I think Achilles is actually one of those gods that does very well in multiple roles, so that's pretty cool. I will kind of go through in descending order what I feel like the worst place for them to be is, all the way to the top, where their home is, where they settle in quite well. And I'm sure you'll know from the start kind of what the best place is for them, because Smite or Hi-Rez has done very well at balancing gods out so that they're where they're supposed to be. That does not mean, though, that they can't fit somewhere else in a team comp. So with Achilles, we'll get into this a little bit before we start kind of going into where they belong. Achilles is a very interesting god. He fits very well in many places. He has a passive that allows him to put on or remove his armor. That when the armor's on, it gives him additional protections as well as health, and that scales as he levels. I think the protections ends up being somewhere between 30 and 40 at max level. And his health scales somewhere between like 200 and 300 up to max level. And then when you take the armor off, it gives him additional movement speed as well as power, which is really good. But I'm going to be honest with you, no matter what role I play him in, and this means for carry, ADC, jungle, no matter where I played him, I tend to keep the armor on, just because he's already a menace as it is for damage. And with the armor on, it doesn't make too much of a difference. I guess in jungle is probably the one situation where maybe you want to take it off so that you can chase a little bit more. But it just seems like, just because of the way his kit is built out, there's not a lot of situations where you have to chase too much, because you do get that stun off of his one. We'll go into his abilities a little bit. We'll run over here to some lane minions just so I can kind of show you. His one is a very open wide attack. The outside just does damage, while the inside circle here will stun enemies that are within it. As you'll see, it does it to the minions, it does it to the gods. It does a lot of damage, especially if you build him correctly. If you build him for a lot of power and a lot of ability damage, that ability will absolutely decimate someone. His 2 gives him passive healing when he's hurting enemy gods. It also gives him, I believe, protections, power, and I think the final one, we'll take a look at it here, but I'm pretty sure, yeah, it's crowd control reduction. You don't notice it too much, but it is a crowd control reduction for about 6 seconds. So yeah, power, protections, and crowd control reduction, as well as the healing upon attacking, damaging enemies nearby. Other than that, you have his dash, which I'll go over here to the god lane just so you can see this. His dash is either a single dash if you're hitting anything other than a god, but if you hit a god, it turns into a double dash. It allows you to use the ability again. This is really good for chasing people down. This is why I say that most of the time I tend to keep the armor on, because his kit is very good at keeping people pinned down. Because you get the stun off whenever you hit your one on them, and then you get your chase as well. So if they're trying to run away, you just dash in, and then you can dash again, and you can get out in front of them. So it's really nice. And then obviously you want to be using your 2 this entire time to get the passive heals as well as the additional power. His basics hit very hard. It's kind of absurd, to be fair, but they hit very hard. A really cool little ultimate as well for Achilles, where he gets he basically becomes crowd control immune. He basically gets the free beads off of his ult, and then his ult will eliminate low health enemies. So if they're within a certain threshold, kind of like Thanatos, he gets an elimination. It's a little tricky to aim, but once you get used to it, it gets pretty easy. It does a very absurd amount of damage. As you can see, this is a level 1 bot, but as you can see, that hit for 430. If we were to hit that on a 20, I think it's somewhere around 200 damage. It's really good. It's not bad. If you're trying to get some like pretty quick damage off on someone through a gank, like if you're in the jungle lane, it works really well to kind of poke someone down. But yeah, 290, that's still almost 300 damage on a level 20 bot. So it's an absurd amount of damage from his ult, and being able to finish off a fight if someone's about to escape with his ultimate for the elimination is really good. You also get, if you are able to get an elimination off on his ult, it resets it so that you can use it again right afterwards. So if you have one of those team fights where everyone is low and you're able to chain it, it works really well. Especially once, even if you can't get another elimination off on it, if you get the first elimination and you're able to hit another enemy god with it, it still does a chunk of damage. So that's pretty cool. So that kind of wraps it up for his abilities. We'll go into now where I feel like he fits best and where I feel like he doesn't fit. To be fair, Achilles fits very well in a lot of lanes. I feel like his probably worst lane would be mid lane. That's going to be the same for a lot of just melee based gods. I feel like don't fit in the mid lane just because they are always going to be being pecked away by the mage and or hunter right now, as it seems to be in the mid lane. But it also takes away from your team comp, so it's very dependent on your team following you. So you almost force your team to change everything that they're doing in order to fit around you. So you're putting a physical in the mid lane with no range. So then you have to hope that someone in the solo lane goes a mage or a hunter, I guess, but preferably a mage, or your carry goes into a magical character because you're bottlenecking your team into physical, which is not good. So I feel like his worst is probably going to be the mid lane. That'll be followed shortly behind probably his ADC lane. He does really well in ADC just because of how hard his basics hit. His basics do hit crazy, so he can work very well in the carry lane if you know how to play him. But just in general, I'd probably say you don't see him there very often, and I probably wouldn't choose him there very often. He's fun to play there, but I feel like he suits better in the jungle, just as a ganking god rather. So I wouldn't really play him there, because if you go into the ADC lane, you then have to start worrying about building into things that help you clear out with the ADC, so like Golden Blade or something like that, or Odysseus Bow if you're feeling wacky. Other than that, I'd say ADC, it's okay. You can build on full attack speed. You can keep up with the hunter for the most part. So for the thing about ADC is you have to pin him into a full attack speed build, which isn't bad, don't get me wrong. Like I said, he's already naturally had the protections from his passive. He does really well at being able to be abused no matter how you build him. He can take a lot of hits. He can be burst very easily, so don't sleep on that. But as you can see, just as a baseline at level 20, we're sitting at 2,800 health. That's with his passive on. If I take the armor off, it knocks it below 2,500. So you can see that's a pretty big boost. But he sits just with no items at all at 2,700 health at max level, which is huge. So if you build him full damage, it's not detrimental. You can still take a bit of a beating, especially with your passive protections from enemy gods. So he actually does work well in the damaging lanes. The thing about ADC is then you have to go into a full attack speed build, because you're the person that's got to be taking objectives. You have to be the one that's taking the towers. You have to be the one that's taking the Phoenixes, Fire Giant, Gold Fury. People are relying on you on that. Not that the mage cannot take down those objectives, or if you have a hunter playing on an off lane, not that they can't help you with that, but that's what the ADC is for. The ADC is meant to be taking down those objectives, taking down the towers, taking down the Phoenixes. So it's very important that you fit into that role. And with a warrior, don't get me wrong, there is plenty of attack speed based warriors that work very well as ADC. But I just feel like even though you do hit hard with your basics, it's kind of weird. You're putting your team in a weird spot. You have to be able to get over and take those objectives. And I think he works better as maybe a seal the deal kind of god rather than an ADC or a mass quick damage off kind of god. He doesn't have that range to be able to get in. The thing is like, whenever you're taking, let's for instance use the example of taking a Phoenix down, right? So typically a hunter, especially when it comes to late game, when you have a Phoenix, you're going to have a huge bottleneck right here. You're gonna have a whole team most of the time, you know, 4 or 5 gods sitting in this Phoenix, trying to stop you guys from getting in there. And the role of the hunter in this position most of the time is to be able to have the guardian and the rest of the team get in there and bully, while you are able to sit at the edge and hit the Phoenix. You're able to take the Phoenix down, and you don't have to get close, so you can get in and out very quickly. The problem is you're putting Achilles in this ADC position. So if you have this fight happen, and you'll see this, I'm pretty sure, in my ADC, I think, or my ADC video with Achilles, that I think we probably once or twice. If it doesn't happen, just know that it will happen. In most games, we will have to push this Phoenix, and when we do, there are times where we're going to get absolutely decimated because there's no one there. I'm the one that's doing most of the damage to the Phoenix in the late game, so I have to move all the way in, make myself completely vulnerable in order to hit this Phoenix down, right? And so we don't have that range, and that taking that range away is kind of terrible. He does have a good escape. You can use his ultimate as escape, so it's not like, but the thing is they're relying on you to be able to do this objective damage is what I'm trying to get at. The next one is going to be the support lane. The support lane is really good for him. It's actually almost a tie between support and jungle for me. Support is really good because his kit works very well as a support. He's got the stun off for his one, so if you're trying to lock people down, he's very tanky just right off the gate because of his passive. So he can take a lot of abuse, and he can also pin people down to help your hunter nail them down. He's also very quick when rotating through just because of his dash. Just getting over to mid lane, he does very well. And then kind of going into jungle. Jungle's really good. He's got so much movement that he's able to move through the jungle very good. He's very tanky, so when he enters into ganks, there's almost nothing anyone can do about it. Even if their other jungle is nearby and is able to engage in the gank as well, in most cases your gank is going to be superior, just because he's putting off just as much bursty damage as their jungle is going to put off in the assassin position, but he's got the tankiness as well. And then he locks down whoever he's ganking. As soon as he enters the fight, you should be passing off with his one to stun whoever you're coming onto, so they're locked down. And then you're able to chase him with your dash. The whole time you're healing off of your 2, and then you can finish, if necessary, with your execute. So it's like very hard for anyone to stop you in your ganking position. That's why I feel like he's very powerful in the jungle. The only thing I'd say that might even slightly make it hard for him is his clear for the jungle. If you have a very good opposing jungler, they could probably bully you out of your farm in the jungle. But I feel like he makes up for that, definitely in the late game, but he can make up for that in ganks. You know, if the jungle focuses so heavily on trying to bully out your farm in the jungle, you just bully out the lanes just because you can. So he does very well in the jungle lane. And then the next and his best position, of course, is going to be the solo lane, and that's because he's very versatile. You can build him 2 different ways. You can build him super tanky with Glad Shield. You still get plenty of power, you still do a lot of damage, and then in the end you have another secondary front line with your Guardian, as well as a Bruiser power dealer. You can also build him full damage, you know, something like a Transcendence, but we'll go into the builds here in a second, and just go full power and just be a menace for damage, right? And either way he fits very well in the solo lane. He gets his levels very quickly compared to the rest of the team. You know, the only person really that probably keeps up to him is going to be the ADC, and then when you come into the fights, you're going to be a huge damage dealer with a lot of control. So he works very, very well in locking down the solo lane early game, and he scales incredibly into the late game. Going into builds, he's very easy to build, I'd say. There's 2 different ways you can build him, other than in the ADC lane, which I'm sure you could build him like a power build or a bruiser build in the ADC lane, but most of the time, like I said, just because of that Phoenix and objective push, you're going to want to go an attack speed build. But the biggest thing is you're going to want to, let's say for the support lane, I've been a big fan lately of Benevolence. I like Benevolence because it allows you to get that health and passive healing, but just mainly for the animosity in the late game for gods like this, because Benevolence, I know that in my support video I didn't do that. I went into Sentinel's Gift just because I hadn't really discovered my love of Benevolence just yet, but Benevolence is a great item, and I think it's very I think it's underused right now in Smite, but Benevolence is huge because it gives you passive healing and a lot of sustain. And then in the late game, you can go into Animosity if you make it to that point. It's a little harder for support lanes because they tend to get under leveled. But if you are able to make it to 20, it's going to be unbelievable, especially for someone like Achilles, because it gives your basic attacks more damage based on 3% of your maximum health. So for the support lane, I'd say you go into Benevolence planning on going into Animosity, and then you build health-based items. Health-based auras mainly for your team because you do want to help. With support, I always feel auras are the best. There are some very strong auras in the game right now, which is really good. My go-to is probably Sovereignty. You build Sovereignty, then you go into Heartward. These all give you health, which will help with Animosity in the late game. And this gives you magical protections. It gives your team magical protections. You end up upgrading this into Amulet of the Stronghold. This 50% of your physical protections are converted to magical protections, which is huge. So you build something like Sovereignty. You also build Shogun's Kansari, again, gives you health, gives everyone attack speed, huge for your hunters. Right now, Gauntlet's in a position where I'd say almost 99.9% of all support are going to build Gauntlet first item just because of how busted it is. It's so cheap comparatively to most protection items. You're sitting at about just under the 2,400 threshold, which is a common price tag for most protection items, and it just gives you so much health and sustain right off the bat. And then when it's fully upgraded, you get magical and physical protection for the rest of your team, and that stacks very well. Like I said, my go-to build in the support lane is going to be a Benevolence into Animosity build and then straight into a health build. So you would have something like Gauntlet fully upgraded. Obviously, like I said, you have Benevolence planning on going into Animosity. And then after that, you just go full health. Something like Shogun's Kansari, you can build Sovereignty. This stacks very well with Gauntlet because it gives physical protections to the rest of your team. You go into Heartward Amulet, you can always upgrade that as well if you want into the Amulet of the Stronghold. This converts all your physical protections over to magical protections as well. Not all of them, but 15% of your physical protections turns into magical. So it makes you a beefcake when it comes to tanking magical abilities. So their mage would be absolutely useless against you. And then there's a couple ways I like to take this, right? If we're playing in a very aggressive team, I would probably go Emperor's Armor. Emperor's Armor, again, gives you a lot of health. And the cool thing about this is it allows you to be very aggressive. It allows you to tower dive. It slows down their tower's attack speed by 30%. And it gives your guys, it also works very well if you guys are ending up kind of getting pushed back. You know, it's a close game and they're getting into your towers and they're pushing your Phoenixes. Emperor's Armor is really good because it gives your towers a little bit more of a boost. Attack speed is increased by 50% for that. So this is a good one. It also gives you the physical protections that get converted, some of them, into magical protection, so it works good. Another item, depending on their team, again, if they go into a team that has heavy high crowd control, you see it a lot in like Fenrir. Neath is played a lot in the carry lane. Just crowd control, somewhere where you're going to be taking a lot of hits from crowd control. I would build Spirit Robe. Spirit Robe is another really good one. Spirit Robe gives you mitigations based on crowd control. So if you are hit with a hard crowd control or root, this can only occur every 15 seconds. You get an additional 15% damage mitigations for 3 seconds. So if you are the target of one of these roots or crowd controls, you get to, a little bit of a boost in protections or mitigations over that next few seconds that you're getting pelted. If you get picked up by a Fenrir and dragged into the tower, it'll help out a lot. So that's another good one. It's really an interchangeable item. This is going to be dependent on what their team is doing. You can also keep in mind that this is all, opinion based. It really depends on what their team is building. If you go into a team that's going very high into lifesteal, then you're going to want to build anti-heal very early on. If you have an Anubis or something like that, you're going to want to build into that. Or if you're having a trouble with lifesteal hunter that you just can't peg down, maybe go into a pestilence as a buffer there as well. So you could build pestilence. It could be a late item too if you guys aren't having trouble and you're doing very well and you're kind of winning your lanes, then maybe save it for the end. But it also could be built very early on if you are having trouble, and that's the reason why then you could build that item as well. So that kind of wraps up the build for him in the support lane. That's kind of how I would build him there. The next way I would go about this is talking about, I'm gonna kind of group this into two because you can build him multiple ways here. So when it comes to him in the mid lane and the solo lane, there are 2 different ways you can build him in the solo lane, and there's 2 different ways you can build him in the mid lane as well. It really doesn't matter. You can't really bottleneck Achilles too much, just because he's a powerhouse no matter how you build him. But one of the very common builds I go with Achilles that work well in the solo or in the mid lane is a full power build. This would be something like Bluestone, upgraded into Bluestone Broche, and that would go into something like Transcendence, and then I typically stick to the entire Jotun's tree. So you would go Jotun's, this would end up being moved into Jotun's Vigor, and then you go into the rest of the tree and build Brawler's Beats for anti-heal and penetration. You get Titan's Bane to help you with physical penetration on your abilities. You go into Crusher for your attack speed and more penetration. It's just a very good tree to stick to. You can also substitute this, just because you can get a little bit more power. You could probably get rid of one of these items, probably not Brawlers, just because you want that anti-heal. But you could also build into Heartseeker. Heartseeker gives you a lot of power, a lot of mana per second, physical penetration, and then your abilities do an additional 3% of the target's maximum health is physical damage. So it's really good, especially when you're moving into the late game fights, when you're got those frontliners sitting out, and you're trying to pick them out. Heartseeker is another really good one, so you could probably substitute that out for like a Titan's Bane and go Heartseeker, because it does a really crazy amount of damage for this. So it's really good. Heartseeker is another really good item, but this is something pretty much along the lines of what I would build him in the mid lane, or build him in the solo lane if I'm trying to go a very heavy power build. So the other build that I would build him, I also probably build something like this in the jungle as well. So if you're looking for a jungle build, obviously I would substitute out his starting item. You don't have to. I feel like if you went Bluestone in the jungle, it wouldn't be too bad. You could also go something like Mannequin Scepter, and then go into Mannequin's Hidden Blade, because that don't sleep on how hard Mannequin's Hidden Blade hits whenever you come out into the late game. Because it gives 20% of their current health as physical damage. So if you haven't taken any damage and you're able to sneak into a fight, the first person that you're going to hit is going to get hurt pretty hard. So Mannequin Hidden Blade is a really good one. I build that a lot of times into the jungle lane. And I also would build something either, depending on if I was trying to go into an attack speed build, I'd go Eye of the Jungle, or if I was planning on going into just a straight power build like I just showed you, I'd go into something like Boomba's Dagger into Boomba's Hammer, and then, just kind of shred away with that. But Mannequin Scepter is not a bad one either. You do want to go into a basic attack kind of build, so just to give you an idea of what I mean. Mannequin Scepter, you'd probably go into Golden Blade. This is a jungle build. You could use it in the ADC lane, I'm sure, but you go into Golden Blade, and then you'd probably go into something like a Berserker Shield, would be a good one. Shogun's Kansari. This is actually, I believe, what I built in the jungle lane. I'm not sure. It was either ADC or the jungle lane. This is what I built. Something along these lines, into like a Quisai. Is really good, and then you could kind of mix this up. You could go Executioner if you wanted. You could go into Crusher, would be a really good item. You just want to make sure you don't sleep on your power. You want to make sure you get your power early on. You don't want your power boost to be at the end, but you get 90 magical power from that one. But early game it's not just Mannequin Scepter. So, but anyway, you want to make sure. And now that I remember, this was actually my ADC build, so I'm pretty sure I went Executioner last item. But it's not something that's locked in. You could go Crusher. Crusher would be a really good one. It gives you attack speed, penetration power. Would fit really well into this build as well. So this would be kind of something like that. I would say you could sell Golden Blade towards the end, but I wouldn't. It's really good with movement speed. It's a good item. Golden Blade's really good. I think it's slept on. You don't see it a lot, I don't think, nowadays. But it's a really good item for Warriors, especially if you're trying to fit them into the ADC lane. So there is that as well. Other than that, I'd say the final build is going to be his Bruiser solo build, which is nasty, of course. A lot of people, and I mean a lot of people, love Mannequin Spikes. Or Manicore Spikes. I don't like Manicore Spikes. I've never really messed with it, and I don't think I ever will. I understand how busted it is right now. I just don't like it, to be fair. But I'm sure there's a lot of people that would. You could build this into a Benevolence build for support or something if you wanted to do a lot of damage. You could build it in the solo lane. I don't know why I don't like it. I know it's a good item. I know it works very well. I just don't, naturally, I just don't build it. I don't know why. I just always skip over it. So I'm not going to include that one just because that would just be me being fake. I never build it. So for his bruiser build in the solo lane, you could go multiple different ways into this. It depends on how and who you think you're facing. You could build a Tainted Steel. Your starter item is completely up to you. Tainted Steel is good because if you know you're going into someone that's going to be heavy lifesteal, this helps you take that away. And then in the late game, you get some of that lifesteal back up to 100% or 50% if you're trying to, you know, go for the more of a tanky approach to it. Other than that, you have Bluestone Pendant is a good item, or Warrior's Axe, which is the one that I'd probably go to most of the time into Sundering, because Sundering is just absolutely busted right now, and I'm sure that's going to be coming up on a nerf here soon. But Sundering Axe would be my go-to for him in this lane. Following that, depending on if you're going into a magical or a physical, it's either going to be Glad Shield or Shogun's, no exceptions. I'm going to build one of those two items right off the rip, Shogun's or Gladiator Shield. But I will end up building both no matter what, but it'll be one of those two items. So you have Gladiator Shield and then you build Shogun's. Where are we at? Shoguns. We would build Berserkers as well, but we would definitely build Shoguns first before that one. And then about at this point in the build, right about here is where it gets very open-ended. Right now at this point you can build pretty much what you need to fill the team up. Right, if you're going to need anti-heal, maybe because the tank isn't building any anti-heal, or you just really need that anti-heal, you could go into that. You could build something like Pestilence. If you were feeling palsy, you could go into a Toxic Blade. If you're going to go into a Toxic Blade, I would follow that with a Quisai if you're going to go into that kind of damage attempt. But typically, I'm going to build one more protection item. Again, is probably going to be my baby. That's probably going to be Spirit Robe. And then probably final item would be Quisai. I always typically end my warriors with Quisai, my basic attack damage warriors at least, with Quisai, just because it's a nice little fill. I know that Gladiator Shield gives you more damage based on your protections, but this isn't going to hurt anything. You know, you're already very tanky, so it doesn't compromise the build at all. And then Spirit Robe. So this would probably be my go-to build for him in the solo lane. You can go the power build. I know that my video that I released in the solo lane, I'm pretty sure is a power build, but this is my go-to build. Most of the time, I'd say 80% of the time I go into the solo lane with Achilles, it's going to be this build here. Like I said, he fits very well in multiple roles. He's not bad at all. He's very good, actually. He's one of the stronger warriors. You see him played a lot, and he can fit pretty much wherever you set him. So I hope you guys enjoyed this kind of idea that I'm doing. The next video will be coming out pretty soon. I think I'm going to rush out the next couple videos you see will probably be these reviews, just because I need to catch up on the Achilles, the Apache, the Amaterasu videos and stuff like that, just to kind of get back on track. The plan is to make these videos after every single god that I finish in the A to Z every role. So for instance, right now I'm doing the On Her videos. Once I finish On Her in every single lane, I will then do one of these videos for that, just so that I'm fresh off of using them in every single role, so that I can kind of really get into why I feel like they fit somewhere. I messed around with the idea of doing it at the end of the series, but this series is going to last probably a year, 2 years, something like that, depending on how frequent I release videos. But somewhere around that 2-year mark, probably, or less. But after every single finish of the A to Z every role for each god, I will release a video kind of like this. So in case you guys don't want to watch all of the gameplay, I know that there have been a lot of comments at the bottom of some of my videos. I'd say probably, I don't know, 4 or 5 comments or something like that about wanting some commentary in the gameplay. I do want to reiterate the fact that I try to focus on the gameplay, just a relaxing experience, just nice music, chill. I've started doing intros in the beginning to go over the build in the beginning, because some people said that they want me to put the full build in the beginning, which is fine. You know, I'm a little weird about that, because I would hope that people are there to watch the videos and kind of enjoy the experience. I know that, I don't know, a huge percentage of people are there just to get the build for whatever they're playing. So I just feel like it kind of, you know, it kind of sucks, right? Because I put the build up in the beginning, someone's going to watch it for 2 seconds, get the build that they want, pause it, build it, and then they'll never watch the video again. So, but I am messing around with an intro now where I explain the build and why I built what I built, and then it goes into just your typical relaxing gameplay with music. Just to, you know, it's for those people that come home, you know, after a long day and just want to sit down and just watch Smite, you know, and just enjoy and kind of see how someone plays and what they do, where they're going, why they're making the moves they move, why they're building what they build, stuff like that. So that's that. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Again, this is Cry, and I'm glad you guys clicked. See you soon.